So Brown worked with Bonson and King, successfully building and testing flying saucers. But they did have some problems.
We made saucers that were as large as 7 feet in diameter, and we ran those all the way up to 1,000,000 volts. And they would fly. We flew those, but they could only fly within the limits of the umbilical cord that was carrying the high voltage to them.
So Brown, Bonson, and King had realized one of the dreams of Nikola Tesla. They had created a noiseless flying craft, without wings, without rudders, and without propellers. But it had to be tethered to its power source by a cable. Tesla's greatest dream was to surround the Earth with electricity, pumped into the upper atmosphere by his power tower on Long Island. This would enable the user to draw electric power anywhere on the globe from his system. Was this all that was needed to make the electric flying craft practical? J. Frank King applied for a patent on their magneto-hydrodynamic propulsion system in 1962. The U.S. government, however, held back the granting of that patent for 5 years. I asked him why.
The patent office understands, each patent examiner understands that any device that could in any way affect the national security would have to go into a special section of the patent office. And so certain types of patents, certain flying machines, weapons of different types, all go into this special part of the patent office, and they won't release it to the public. In fact, they even send people around saying, we'll do bad things to you if you talk about it, until we release it. And they finally did release it in 1967. In the meantime, as far as I know, there were no government tests or anything else run on it. I've never read any reports that have been written by researchers, government researchers on it. But I imagine there must have been some report written on it to have released it.
Patent number 1310990, lodged on 11 December 1970 by British Railways, detailed the technical data required to build a space vehicle powered by fusion energy. The space vehicle is circular in shape, and the primary source of particle emission is an array of lasers. However, in the middle of 1982, it was announced that the program had been abandoned.
My real-world job, if you want to put it that way, is in the Space Shuttle program. I'm project manager for spaceflight operations for the McDonnell Douglas Corporation.
And you are you're stationed at the...
I'm stationed at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
Mr. John Schuessler is also deputy director of a worldwide organization known as MUFON.
Yes, the Mutual UFO Network's an international research and investigative organization dedicated to the study of the UFO phenomenon. And it's international because the scope of this problem is international. UFOs are seen everywhere, and they're poorly investigated in so many areas. And MUFON was put together by a group of specialists that really wanted to do more than just look at lights in the sky or chase the silly world of UFOs. We wanted to do something realistic about it. We feel there's pay dirt in the study of the UFO phenomenon. Whether it be psychological or an engineering problem, it's still going to be worthwhile. So we have consultants the world over, as well as investigators and just subscribers that contribute on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Mr. Schuessler and the Mutual UFO Network seem to be the only credible organization in the world today carrying out objective, scientific investigation of the UFO phenomenon, even in advance of government research. I say they seem to be, but I don't believe so. In the mid-1970s, a group known as Ground Saucer Watch filed a lawsuit against the Central Intelligence Agency. This was done under the Freedom of Information Act. This lawsuit was carried on by a group calling itself Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, or CAUSE. Finally, in 1978, as a result of this lawsuit, 900 pages of information relating to the CIA investigation of UFOs were released. These 900 sheets are supposed to be all the available information the CIA had on UFO investigation up to 1978.
In December '78, when the CIA released about 900 sheets of paper, of which these are some, I went through them with a fine-tooth comb. There were lots of duplicates. For example, if Mr. X in the CIA had written a memo in 1952 to his associates, Mr. Y and Mr. Z, and maybe Y had made some notes on the margin, when the CIA purged their UFO files and released copies, they would release a copy of X's memo plus the copy of that memo that went to Y plus the one that went to Z. So there were a lot of duplicates.
Philip Klass is the senior electronics editor for Aviation Week and Space Technology.
Out of those 900 pages, there were about 250 sheets over a 33-year period, and that had something of value. At least I felt it did. That means that on average, the CIA, the entire agency, wrote about 8 to 10 sheets of paper per year on the subject of UFOs. I venture to say that if we could get the CIA to purge and release documents on hiring prostitutes for visiting foreign dignitaries, there would be 10 times as many sheets.
8 to 10 sheets per year from the entire resources of the Central Intelligence Agency. Obviously, all available information was not released. Stephen Stoics, administrator of CAUSE, explained why.
Basically, what these government agencies will do, what the CIA will do, is ask for every available specific on a document. If you don't know the precise date time group, if you don't know the precise originating agency, if you don't know very exact details of the incident, they won't acknowledge its existence. If you're one day off on the time group, there's a very carefully worded response stating, we know of no such incident on day in question. They don't respond to blanket questions because they don't have to.
Has a background in liberal arts, history, teaching, and English. He also speaks fluent French, holds a degree in Russian, and is co-author of the Philadelphia Experiment. Stanton T. Friedman holds bachelor's and master's degrees in physics and spent 14 years working on classified government programs in high-power electric propulsion. Since 1970, they've been lecturing in schools and colleges across the United States and Canada on the presence of alien craft around planet Earth. I'd arranged to meet them in the small Arizona town of Prescott, where they'd been invited to deliver their lecture at the Yavapai College.
We have been told that the Air Force was the chief agency involved in the investigation of UFOs. We have been told about Project Grudge, Project Sign, Project Blue Book. And we have been told that these are essentially the only efforts by the Air Force to investigate the phenomenon of UFOs. And that Project Blue Book was closed in 1969, and that its records in 1975 were transferred to the National Archives. And so if you write a letter of inquiry to the government, any agency of the government, you invariably will get the same answer. The government's files on UFOs were transferred to the National Archives. Project Blue Book material is totally available, and it can be viewed or obtained from the National Archives. There's only one thing wrong with that statement, and that is that it is not true. And it becomes increasingly clear that they have known a great deal, and that they have been keeping it from the American public for reasons known to the government.
I had arranged for Stan and Bill to meet me in my motel room the next day. Primarily, I wanted to question them further on the cover-up of UFO investigation, and to see if they had any more information on government projects such as the Philadelphia Experiment or electric flying craft. I wasn't really prepared for what they told me.
I am convinced, after 24 years now of studying investigation, that the evidence is overwhelming that planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial vehicles. Some UFOs are somebody else's spacecraft. I'm also convinced that some small group in the government of the United States, and probably in other countries as well, knows very well that we're dealing with alien spacecraft. We're dealing with what in the States is appropriately called a cosmic Watergate. We're not convinced that everything should be put on the table. Technical data, for example, I'm not at all sure should be out on the table, because the key feature about flying saucers, forgetting philosophy, religion, and all those other areas which are certainly important, has to be, how do they work? Every government in the world would like to get its mitts on that kind of technology. Unfortunately, what that would mean, better weapons delivery and defense systems, I suppose. And so I don't think that data should be put on the table unless everybody puts all their data out on the table.